Hi, this is Tamara from mooglyblog.com, and in this video, I'm going to be demonstrating how to crochet the Patons Modern Picots Crochet Cowl. This is a free pattern that you'll find on Yarnspirations.com, and to make this pattern, you'll need 2 colors of Patons Norse in contrasting colors. I used the gray pearl and cream on this one. This is the cream. You'll also need a USL 8mm crochet hook. To make this cowl, we simply work from the bottom up and create this great long cowl that scrunches down beautifully when you wear it. It's really fuzzy and warm, so let's go ahead and get started. For the first row of the Modern Picots Crochet Cowl, we're going to make 55 foundation double crochets with our main color. So for me, that's the darker gray pearl. Now when you make your slip knot to begin, I recommend that you leave at least 6 inches at the beginning, not just to weave in your ends, but because we're also going to use this end to cinch up the bottom of our first round. When we make our foundation double crochets, of course, we'll end up at the top of the stitch, and when we join to work in the circle, we'll use this little tail to sew the bottom of that first and last stitch together. So start as you normally would with a slip knot on your hook, and then we're going to make 55 foundation double crochets. If you've never worked the foundation double crochet before, the way I like to do it is I start with a chain 2, yarn over, go into that first chain I made, the one closest to the slip knot, and I like to go under that back hump, but that's a personal preference again. Then I yarn over, pull through that loop, and now that loop at the bottom will be the chain at the bottom of our first stitch, sort of the foundation chain. Then we yarn over and pull through again, working through that chain, so to speak. You can see that one right there. Then we yarn over and pull through 2, and yarn over and pull through 2 to finish our double crochet. Then I always like to put a stitch marker in the first and last stitch of my any round, basically, whenever I'm working in the round. It just helps me keep track and not accidentally work into the slip stitch. Then, to continue with our row of foundation double crochets, we yarn over again, and then we insert our hook under the 2 loops at the bottom of the stitch. Remember, we talked about how that would be the chain right there, so we want to go under those 2 loops now, yarn over and pull a loop through there, and now that loop will be the chain at the bottom of our second stitch. Then we yarn over again, pull through just that chain to start our stitch, yarn over and pull through 2, and yarn over and pull through 2. And that's how we make the second one and all the rest of them. So as I say, continue until you have 55 foundation double crochets. Okay, so when you've made your 55 stitches, you'll have a row that's about twice this length. I'm just making a small sample size today. It's a little easier to see it on screen. But what we want to do now is we want to join to start working in the round. So you can lay out your strip nice and flat with your, with your hook on one side and your hook hand and the end in the other, and then just bring that right over. That way you won't get any twists in your row here. And we're just simply going to join to that first stitch with a slip stitch, just as we normally would. Just have to make sure I've got my yarn here in back. There we go. And then simply slip stitch right into, I grabbed the wrong end, so let me try that again, slip stitch into that stitch there to join to work in the round. So as I was saying, we want to make sure that we've got our tail end here, because then when we finish off and weave in our ends, before you weave in this end, you can simply take this end on your yarn needle and loop it through the bottom of that last stitch there that we made, and that will close up the bottom of your first row. So for now, we'll continue on with round 2. Okay, so to begin round 2, we start with the chain 3. 1, 2, 3. This chain 3 will count as our first stitch of the round throughout the pattern anytime we start with the chain 3. So we're going to go ahead and put our stitch marker, moving it up from the first stitch below here into the top of that chain 3. That third chain is now marked, so we know that's our first stitch. Then we're going to continue by working a double crochet, a picot, and another double crochet all in that first stitch. So we yarn over, go right into that same first stitch of the round, make a double crochet, and then we're going to picot. So a picot stitch, there's also several different ways to picot, but for this pattern, we chain 3, and then make a slip stitch in that back loop of that very first chain you made. So you can just go right into that back loop of that first of those 3 chains. And with the fuzzy yarn here, sometimes it can be a little trickier, but get that hook in there. There you go. So you want to make sure that chain is a little bit looser maybe, because you will be working back into it. And then just pull through for a slip stitch, like so. And that is your picot. Then we double crochet again in that first stitch. There we are. Like so. So now our picot is hanging out right there on top. The next thing we do is skip the next 4 stitches. So 1, 2, 3, 4 will all be skipped. So I'll put my thumb here on the 5th one. And in that next one, we're going to work 2 double crochets, a picot, a chain 1, and then a double crochet. So let's do that together. We go into that next stitch there after the 4 we've skipped and work 2 double crochets, 1, 2, then we picot, 1, 2, 3 chains, go into that back of that first chain you made with a slip stitch. There we are. So we've got our 2 double crochets, our picot, then we chain 1, then we double crochet back in that same stitch, picot again, flip a little bit more yarn there, 1, 2, 3 chains, and slip stitch in the back of the first one. There we are. And then we double crochet again in that stitch. So in that stitch, we've worked several stitches. So let's go over that again here. We skipped 4, and then in the next one, we worked 2 double crochets, followed by a picot, a chain 1, another double crochet, another picot, and another double crochet. So then we have our repeat. Skip the next 4 stitches, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then work that set of stitches again. So let's do it together one more time. We are going to work 2 double crochets. So there's 1 and 2. Then we picot, 1, 2, 3 chains, slip stitch in that first chain you made, then chain 1, work another double crochet, then a picot, 1, 2, 3, slip stitch in that first chain made, and finally one more double crochet. So this is the repeat that will take you all the way around round 2. So I'll see you when we get really close to the end. So as we finish up round 2, we do our repeat until 4 stitches remain. Then we skip over those last 4 stitches, and I can see I marked the last one right there. And then we are going to work again into that first stitch of the previous round, that very first one we worked into that our chain 3 came out of. That's where we're going now. So we are going to work 2 double crochets and a picot back in that first stitch. And essentially that's going to complete a first version of our repeat here. So jump on over to that very first stitch you worked into. Go and take your time and find that stitch there. And then work 2 double crochets and a picot right in there. So there's 1, and there's our second one. And then we'll picot, 1, 2, 3. Slip stitch in that first chain made. And then all we need to do is join with a slip stitch to the top of that chain 3. And with that, we have a total of 45 double crochets in our full-sized Modern Picots crochet cowl. Right now, slip stitching is a little easier said than done. Let me get that stitch marker there out of the way a little bit. There we go. So we can get in the top of that chain 3. And there we have it. So I can move that stitch marker out of the way as well. Now, if you were to continue in this pattern all with one color, which you can absolutely do, you could continue on with this pattern. However, it's time to change to our contrasting color, which is our cream. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to pull that slip stitch right back out. And I'm going to use our next color to make the slip stitch. And that will give us a really clean color change that we can use then for our third round. So let me pull up and end here. I'm just using some leftover yarn from other projects to demo with today. So let's see here, get that end out. And we're just going to, as I say, go into the stitch that you were going to join to with the slip stitch. Got a little knot in the end there, so I'll go in a little further. We'll yarn over and pull that right on through to finish. And now we're working with our second color, and we can begin round 3. Round 3 begins again with a chain 3. So 1, 2, and 3. And we'll grab our stitch marker there and put that right in the top of that third chain, so we know that's what we're coming back to. And then we double crochet in the first stitch. So that same stitch that we joined to, we go right back in there. And if you like to, you can work over that end just a little bit to tack it down before you weave in your end later. However, just leave the gray kind of hanging out back there in the inside of your project. Don't cut it off. Your darker color or your first color, whatever color you're using for the first color, just leave that hanging off in the middle there. Don't cut it off because we'll pull it back in later, because we only want to have 4 ends to weave in at the end of this project. So we've got our double crochet in the first stitch, and then we're going to chain 2, 1, 2, and then we begin the repeat with the asterisk. We work a double crochet, chain 2, double crochet in the next chain 1 space. So remember, our chain 1 there was right in the middle of our repeat. We've got the 2 double crochets, the picot, the chain 1, that's what we're looking for, and the double crochet, picot, double crochet. We want to jump all the way over to this double crochet, or excuse me, this chain 1 right here to make our double crochet, chain 2, double crochet. So many of you may know that it's kind of like a big V stitch. We've worked a double crochet, chain 2, and double crochet right back in that chain 1 space, like so. There we are. Then we chain 2 again, 1, 2, and repeat around. So we find that next chain 1 space, jump all the way over to the chain 1 space in that next repeat, and do the same thing in there. Double crochet, chain 2, 1, 2, double crochet right back in that chain 1 space, and chain 2 again. So we're going to repeat that all the way around until we join to the top of that chain 3, but that time we'll join with our first color. We'll be switching colors again. So I'll see you at the end of round 3. Okay, so when you get to the end of round 3, you've finished up with that big V stitch and then another chain 2. But to finish it up all the way, we need to work another double crochet right into that top of that chain 3 we worked into before. So we'll go ahead and find where those first couple stitches were there and go right back in there for one more double crochet. And if you see that knot, I put that knot in there myself because I screwed up. So don't count that as marks against the yarn. There we go. So I've got that final double crochet in there, and then I'm just going to slip stitch to the top of that chain 3. But I almost forgot, I need to change colors again. So once again, just bring that strand right on up from the inside. You don't want to pull too tight. You just want to pull it gently up to the height of that stitch, and then you're ready for round 4. Okay, so to begin round 4, I started with a chain 3, and I've got my stitch marker there in the top of that chain 3, and then we're going to work that big repeat again, but now we're going to be working it in the chain 2 spaces in between those V stitches. So this one's more of a 3 here, but you can see here's our V stitch. We want to work in the chain 2 stitches in between, and not into those actual chains, but rather into that chain space. So it's that big repeat again, starts with a double crochet, and then a second double crochet. You can see I'm just going right around that chain 2 for these stitches, not into the individual chains. Then we picot, just as before. Then we chain 1, double crochet again, right back into that same chain 2 space. Picot again. There we go. And then, of course, we will double crochet again right back into that chain 2 space, like so. So it's just the same repeat as before, but we skip over those V's and work into the chain 2 spaces in between until we get all the way around. Then we just slip stitch to the top. So I'll see you at the end of round 4. Okay, so at the end of round 4, we just skip those last 2 stitches there, and we go ahead and join to the top of the chain 3 with a slip stitch. And of course, we're going to change colors again. Looks like I need to pull that stitch marker out of the way here. There we are. So we go in for our slip stitch right into the top of that chain 3 and gently pull up our contrast color there and finish the slip stitch with that. And with that, we're ready for round 5. To begin round 5, we're going to start with a chain 4, and this is going to count like a double crochet and a chain 1. So what I want to do now is I want to go ahead and put a stitch marker in that third chain. So you see I've chained 4 here, 1, 2, 3, 4, but I want to put the stitch marker just in the top of that third one. because again, that's going to count as the top of that first double crochet there. Put my hook back in the loop there, and then we continue on by working a double crochet, chain 2, double crochet in the next chain 1 space. So again, we need to jump all the way over here to that first chain 1 space so that we can make that double crochet, followed by a chain 2 and another double crochet. Then we chain 2 again, just like we were doing before with this color. Jump all the way over there to that next chain 1 space and do the same thing again. Double crochet, chain 2, double crochet, all right into that chain 1 space, and then we chain 2 and do it again all the way around. So I'll see you at the end of round 5. Okay, when we get to the end of round 5, we're going to end that last repeat not with a chain 2 after the V-stitch as we've been doing before, but just with a chain 1. Then we're ready to go ahead and join to the top of that chain 3, but again, we want to switch colors when we do that. So go ahead and insert your hook. You can kind of flip it over here and find that other color. There we are. Wanted to hide from me. And we go ahead and make our slip stitch with that. And with that, we're ready for round 6. Round 6 begins again with a chain 3 that will count as our first double crochet. There we are. After that, we work 1 double crochet, a picot, and a double crochet right in that first stitch. So that means the top of the chain 3 that we joined to. So we go right back in there for a double crochet. And then our picot, just as we've been doing before. There we are. And then another double crochet, all worked into that little chain there at the top of our chain 3. And then we can continue on with our repeat. We skip the next 2 double crochets, so that would be these 2 right here, and we're going to hop all the way over to this chain 2 space right here, and that's where we're going to work that main color repeat, where we do 2 double crochets. So there's 1 and 2. My yarn's gotten a little twisted. Even with just 2 colors, it's a good idea to take your time and untwist those every once in a while. There we go. So we've got our 2 double crochets, then our picot. Get that in there. Then our chain 1 and double crochet, picot, and double crochet again. Like I say, it's the exact same repeat we've been doing in this color for the previous rounds. We just needed to get started in a slightly different place to continue our sort of offset repeat here. So then we're all set with that one. We've got 2 double crochets, picot, chain 1, double crochet, picot, double crochet. So we jump over that next V-stitch to the next chain 2 space and do the same thing again all the way around. So I'll see you at the end of round 6. Okay, so you repeat that around round 6 until you come to those last 2 double crochets. So that means that last V-stitch there. We're going to skip right on over it and work 2 double crochets and a picot back there in the top of that chain 3 again where we started this round. So let me get my hook straightened back out in my hand here though and yarn over. So we can jump right on over to that very first chain 3 and work our 2 double crochets followed by a picot. So there's 1 and 2, and then 1, 2, 3 chains for our picot, like so. And then we can join to the top of that chain 3 again, of course, and change colors again. Now after that, we have our repeat. We simply repeat rounds 3 through 6. So that's one we'd be going to back right now, would be the round 3 repeat. And we repeat those on through the pattern until 19 total rounds have been worked, ending on a 3rd row repeat. Then we fasten off this contrast color and we work our last 2 rounds in our main color, the one we started with. So I'm going to go ahead and do another round 3 repeat and then we'll finish our cowl together. Okay, so at the end of our last round 3 repeat, again, we want to make sure to join, just as we did before, to the top of that chain 3, taking that stitch marker out if it wants to be in the way. And as I say, this time we will yarn over and finish that slip stitch with our beginning color, the first one you started with, the main color. And then after that, we can cut our contrast color. So again, you just want to make sure that you leave a good 6 inches or so you can weave that end in when you're done. There we are. So we'll set that aside. And then again, I'll tuck that end in here when I'm all done with my cowl, but for now I'll just tuck it to the inside out of our way. So with that, we can continue with round 20. To begin round 20, we start again with a chain 3, 2, 3. There we are. And this time we're not actually going to join to this chain 3. It's going to give us the same height as the other ones, but in order to get our stitch count right for round 21, we're going to end up skipping this one. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is work the next stitch, and then I will put the stitch marker in the top of the next one, since that's where we're going to actually join. So in the next chain 2 space, which is right here, remember in between those V stitches essentially, we're going to work 2 double crochets. So I'll go ahead and put my stitch marker in the first one of those, because that's where we're actually going to join at the end of this round. There we go. And then 1 more double crochet, and then a chain 1, and then 2 more double crochets. So if you remember back to that big crazy repeat with the picots we've been doing, it's essentially the same thing, but this time there's no picots in there. 2 double crochets, chain 1, 2 double crochets. So that is the repeat that we take on a round. Again, we want to skip over that V-stitch and come to the chain 2 space in between and work our 2 double crochets, followed by a chain 1, and then 2 more double crochets. So that is our repeat all around, and I will see you at the end of round 20. Okay, so here we are at the end of round 20, and as I said, we're going to skip right on over that chain 3 right there and join to that very first double crochet with our slip stitch. And this time, of course, we do not need to change colors. So for round 21, which is our last round, we're going to chain 3 again, and this time it will count as our first double crochet. So we'll go ahead and put our stitch marker in the top of that one. There we go. And then we simply double crochet in each stitch and chain space around. Now, not this first one, because that chain 3 does count as our first double crochet. So we'll come to the second double crochet and work a double crochet in there. And then when we come to that chain 1 space, you work a double crochet right in the chain 1 space. If you prefer, you can go into the actual chain itself, but I think going into the chain space itself looks just as good for this pattern, and it is the way the pattern is written and shown in the photos. So, as I said, we just work in the top of each double crochet, and then double crochet right into that chain 1 space whenever you come to it, like so. There it is. So that at the end of this round, you should again have your 55 double crochets, just like we started with. Okay, so at the end of round 1, you can join with a slip stitch to the top of that chain 3, and then cut your yarn and finish it off and weave in your ends. But we've still got that very first end to take care of, so I just wanted to go over that with you really quickly. Now, I mentioned, since we started with those foundation stitches, the foundation double crochets, the bottom of that row, this was our first row we made there, it isn't connected. So to do that, we've got our tail end there that we needed a long one to weave in anyway. So we're just going to go ahead and put that on our yarn needle, but before we weave it in, just go ahead and take a little stitch right at the bottom of the other side of that first row, like so. And then you can just cinch it right on up, and that end is ready to weave in. So that's how to crochet the Patons Modern Picots Crochet Cowl. I hope you'll give this pattern a try, as well as Patons Norse. It comes in some really beautiful colors, so you can go with the gray neutrals or add your own favorite jewel tones or whatever colors you like. I've made this cowl nice and generous in the size so it fits easily over your head, but also really long like this, so you can see it really squishes down beautifully when you wear it. Thank you so much for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe.